Stalin is the builder of a Buddhist utopia. Communism exists to establish the kingdom of the Buddha, which would help everyone reach enlightenment regardless of class background. Marxism and Buddhism are sibling ideologies that complement one another. Welcome to the Alien Files, your favorite show with some of the most deranged ideas out there. Okay. Let's back up. Before anyone calls me a delusional weirdo making barely comprehensible videos with absolutely no sources, but with yellow subtitles and topics that should have never left someone's basement, these are not my own wild dreams, nor the propaganda of some shady conspiracy websites. These were actually serious claims made by the ideological fathers of modern, independent Myanmar. But how is it possible? Welcome to Basement Brain Cell, where we answer the questions you've never had on topics you've never heard of. During the colonial era, the Burmese, understandably, held deep resentment towards the West. Humiliated by the British, who had stripped them of independence and reduced them to second-class citizens in their own lands, they resisted European dominance. By the early 20th century, a simple dichotomy emerged. Colonialism was equated with capitalism, so opposing capitalism also meant opposing colonialism, and the natural alternative to capitalism was, well, communism, then rising in global popularity. So some of the anti-colonial Burmese activists founded the Communist Party of Burma, CPB. Yet for most ordinary Burmese, communism was still a foreign, or I should rather say, alien concept. The challenge was to localize Marxism and translate it into the local culture using local language and local ideas. And in Burma, nothing was as universally shared as Buddhism. I mean, not even Buddhism is shared by all of the Burmese, but more about that later. One of the CPB's co-founders, Thakin Soe, pioneered in what might be called a Buddhist interpretation of communism. He used Buddhist philosophical terms to fuse the two systems, such as the Four Noble Truths, which state that life is full of suffering, literally dukkha. There is a cause of this suffering, there is the end to the suffering, and the end can be achieved by following the Buddhist path. Thakin Soe reinterpreted dukkha, suffering, as the product of capitalist class inequality. On the other hand, however, class inequality was linked to another Buddhist term called paticca-samuppada, dependent origination, which basically said that all things are caused by other things, and there are many sophisticated types of connection between these things, to put it like really simply. Anyways, according to them, if your parents were peasants oppressed by colonialism, it is likely that you will also be oppressed by people who benefited from the system. The role of communism was here to eliminate inequality and create a worldly nirvana, or quote-unquote a Buddhist heaven, an ideal social order in which everyone would have equal chances to pursue enlightenment. Buddhism remained the ultimate spiritual goal, but communism would prepare the ground for it to thrive. In this way, Buddhism morally legitimized Marxism, and Thakin Soe went even so far to declare Karl Marx as a secular Buddha, whatever that means. After Burma gained independence in 1948, things became even more complicated. For the next decades, two prime ministers shaped the country, Ba Soe and U Nu. Ba Soe became known for his essay titled Stalin, the Man Who Built Earthly Nirvana, in which he portrayed Stalin as a transformative Buddha-like figure, bringing nirvana into the world by reorganizing society under socialist ideals. U Nu, on the other hand, took a more pragmatic approach, I might say, because his priority was actually fighting capitalism and colonial remnants with a blend of Buddhist ethics and socialist economics. To him, the state should care for its citizens' material needs and religion about their spiritual growth. Nothing fancy, right? What was fancy was the fact that he literally called it the middle way politics, borrowing directly from Buddhist philosophy. It was actually something more than just a brainless blend of Buddhism and Marxism, because he rejected both capitalist individualism and Marxist materialism. Economics for him was merely a tool. The ultimate goal remained Buddhism. And as he once bluntly told the parliament in the 50s, the wisdom of Karl Marx is worth less than 1/10 of the dust on the Buddha's foot. His vision was laid out in the Pyidawtha Plan, literally prosperous kingdom, which is also a bizarre name for a socialist plan, as Last time I checked, socialists didn't really like anything connected to reality, but whatever. The plan was an 8-year-long welfare program in which Burma invested in healthcare, housing, education, social insurance, industry and infrastructure. As Unu once said, one can only be moral with a full stomach. He also hosted the 6th World Buddhist Council and declared Buddhism the state religion in 1961, which was absolutely the best thing he could do and did not worsen already tense relations with Burma's non-Buddhist minorities. But as we dig deeper into this rabbit hole, you'll soon realize it's really nothing compared to what his successors did later. And here comes Ne Win, a general who in 62 thought, I don't really like this UNU stuff too much, and overthrew the government, establishing a military dictatorship. A move that will soon become Burma's classic. At first, some folks were like, great, he might stop this Marx Buddhist BS and support business growth for once. After all, he's a military guy, and what kind of military guy would support such a funky mixture of Buddhism and communism? But, well, no. Instead, Ne Win was deeply hostile to anything even remotely associated with the West, especially capitalism. And he embraced socialism, nationalizing virtually anything. His genius plan was called the Burmese Way to Socialism, and brought near-total North Korea-level kinda isolation. Foreigners received visas for just 24 hours, foreign media were banned, and English language education was drastically reduced. He banned nightclubs, card games, and horse racing, which were supposedly all anti-Buddhist, though he happily enjoyed them himself while traveling abroad. Over 15,000 businesses across all major industries were nationalized, and private investment in new enterprises became illegal. Parliamentary democracy was replaced with military dictatorship. Now, the country was ruled by the Revolutionary Council, and Ne Win, so graciously, grafted himself the position of simultaneously president, prime minister, commander-in-chief, and the head of the sole legal party, the Burma Socialist Program Party. The results were amazing. Disastrous. Sorry, I slipped my tongue. Some slight progress was, however, made in terms of social welfare, like lowering illiteracy, lowering infant mortality, making life expectancy longer, and just generally enhancing access to healthcare, but the economy collapsed. Rice exports, crucial to the economy, shrunk, the black market ballooned to 80% of GDP, and growth from 60s to 80s averaged only 1.3% annually, compared to 5 or 6% before, leaving Burma far behind any country they could have previously compared to themselves with. Foreign currency reserves dropped from 214 millions to just 50 millions, and farmers were forced to sell crops at artificially low prices, and by the late 80s, 86% of rural residents, so about 70% of the population, lived below the poverty line. Wealth concentrated in the hands of a few elites close to the junta, especially His Excellency Mr. Worldly Buddha Ne Win. You may think, okay, this jackass is deranged. The guy is out of touch, he cannot go with this communism, Buddhism, enlightenment, social welfare stuff.
Stop it. Get some help.
But, well, guess what? He tied his rule with Buddhism even more tightly and wrote his best of the best, top-notch, cutting-edge thoughts in the Burma Socialist Program Party's manifesto called System of Correlation Between Man and His Environment. And honestly, I have so many questions just after reading the title, like, who came up with it? What do you mean?
What that means? What
by system of correlation, and what happened with good old manifestos like, oh, we don't like rich, or like, oh, why we better than these jerks from the other sides of the border? Never mind, he's the author. In this amazing piece of work, he of course emphasized the inseparability of Marxism and Buddhism, and over the years he became a great patron of Buddhism, funding over 20,000 pagodas and stupas, and creating the state-controlled Sangha Mahanayaka committee. And this was very important since he created this committee to oversee the monastic community in sort of a carrot and stick approach. You like us? You're loyal?
Smart. You're loyal. You smart.
We'll grant you with a carrot, generous financial support. You disobey us, you're just waiting to be punished. And in this way, the Buddhist Sangha became an extension of the state, a fusion of barracks and monastery that persists to this day. Burmese economy was shaken even more in 1985 when Ne Win came up with truly astonishingly bizarre idea. One day, he woke up and thought, we should do a currency reform. Let's invalidate our bills and replace them with 75, 35, and 15 kyat bills. Oh, and by the way, let it be effective as soon as possible, and please do not tell the public. It's a surprise. And if you think that these denominations are pretty weird for banknotes, then you're absolutely right. And Newin was doing that because it was his 75th birthday. The bizarre reform wiped out Burmese people's savings overnight, as people not only could not prepare themselves for this move, but also could not even exchange old banknotes to the new ones. According to statistics, this move made 70 or even 80% of the currency absolutely worthless. And it's not the end. Only 2 years later, he decided to demonetize 3 more banknotes, including 2 that he just introduced. And in this case, it actually happened without any compensation or any sort of public notification of the reform. And he came up with another brilliant idea. He introduced 40 and 90 bills because they're divisible by 9, and 9 is a lucky number. And as a result of these wonderful reforms, social unrest exploded, culminating in nationwide protests that marked the end of the Buddhist socialist experiment and opened Burma to capitalism. That might have been the end of socialism, but was not the end of the military rule in Burma. And for sure not the end of a weird marriage between whatever state ideology they had and Buddhism. Junta embraced crony capitalism, bringing the old alliance between the Tatmadaw, which is the military, and the Buddhist sangha, which remains central to the country's political order until today. Myanmar is a multi-ethnic country though, and no government has ever reconciled its division. You've got Buddhist Bamar majority in the center, Christians Kachins to the north, Shans, Mons, Chinswa, and in total more than 100 minorities. The military argues that there are exactly 135 different groups, which is questioned by many scholars and most likely is just connected to the fact that 1 plus 3 plus 5 is 8, and 8 is a lucky number, so, you know, like, oh boy, someone do love their numbers there. But anyways, among all the minorities, you also got Muslim Rohingyas in the west, close to Bangladesh. But they are not among the recognized minorities, as they are what is often called the most persecuted minority in the world. Burmese government denies them the right to call themselves Burmese, saying that they are illegal migrants from Bangladesh, and guess what? Bangladesh says that they are illegal migrants from Myanmar when Myanmar is trying to send them back. All of that despite many Rohingya families having been living in Burmese Rakhine state for generations. This topic would probably require a separate video since it's really complex, and it's not really my point. My point is that not only Burmese government and military was engaged in all those civil wars with minorities, especially Rohingyas, but it was also the Buddhist Sangha. The 21st century in Burma saw rising anti-Muslim violence, embodied by monk Ashin Wirathu, co-founder of nationalist movements such as 969 and Mabata. With backing from the military-linked Union Solidarity and Development Party, his campaigns helped pass the Law for the Protection of Race and Religion in 2015, restricting religious conversions, regulating interfaith marriages, and imposing mandatory birth spacing, and generally policies clearly aimed at reducing minority populations. Wirathu became infamous for his hate speech, claiming that 100% of are committed by Muslims and calling them mad dogs or a threat to Burma. But his movements actually enjoyed open state support. For example, the military-owned telecom operator Mytel changed its prefix to 969 as a gesture of solidarity to his movement. The outcome was catastrophic. In 2017, Tatmadaw operations forced around 700,000 Rohingya to flee to Bangladesh. The UN has called them the most persecuted minority in the world, documenting mass killings and systematic abuses. Today, around 860,000 Rohingya live in refugee camps across Bangladesh. It always baffles me how quickly the bizarre relationship between communism and Buddhism changed into the union of Buddhism and weird fascist-like politics often embodied by monks themselves. This is of course not to say that during socialist times there were no clashes between Bamars and minorities. there were, and of course in modern times not all Burmese Buddhists support such violence. Myanmar has a rich tradition of socially engaged Buddhism, and many monks openly oppose military policies and corruption. Many monks also condemned nationalist extremism, and the vast majority of Burma's 500,000 clergy has never joined such movements. And yeah, I mean, there's no brilliant ending thoughts to that from me. If you're still here, it means you either liked the video or fell asleep. If it's the first, thanks. Feel free to like, subscribe, and check out the other videos on the screen. Either way, stay tuned. More questions you've never had are coming up next.